We're here this morning with Don Bradley. We're in Plantation, Florida. We're going to spend the next few minutes getting to know Don a little bit better and find out what made Don tick and some good things that he might share with young directors up and coming. So the first thing that I'd like to ask you, Don, is why did you decide to become a band director, and what were the circumstances that began your band career?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm like probably most of us. We all started back probably in elementary school, at least early school, and back at that time when it came time to be a potential band member, my dad had two horns up in the attic. He had a old Conn cornet and a York trombone, and I got the trombone. Now, this is towards the end of the fourth grade, and we had a pretty good system going in the band director was the same band director that taught over at the high school. There were I think 5 elementary schools in the town. This was Rockville Center, New York, about 35 miles out of New York. And of course, I went through the usual process, and I wasn't very good. But I enjoyed it. And one thing that happened to me, I had an older cousin. He was 3 or 4 years older than I was, and he was taking trombone lessons from a trombone player that played with Paul Whiteman. And so he was pretty good. And my father encouraged us to get together. We lived about 18 miles apart, but usually on Sundays, one family would visit the other, and we got to taking my horn when we went to his place, and he would bring his horn when he came over, and we'd spend some time together. And I got to admit, he was my first teacher. He taught me a lot of things, and I really got interested in it. And he gave me some solos, and he gave me some material to work on. He taught me how to triple tongue. And as it was going, I started moving up from the bottom of the section a little bit at a time, and worked up to first chair trombone, and was given a solo to play with the band. I remember the name of it, but I don't know who wrote it, and I haven't ever been able to get a copy of it. It was called Execution.
And what grade were you in by this time?
This is my junior year.
Okay.
In high school, and I played this solo from memory, and it went real well. And I was, of course, got a boost from that, and that's about it. In high school, the guidance counselor called me into the office. This is my junior year, and said, "Well, what are you thinking about doing?" And the truth is, I hadn't thought about doing anything, because I was in high school during the war years. I graduated in '46, and the war was there, and most of us, it wasn't what we were going to do after. It was which branch of service are we going to go into. Right. But the war was over, 1945, and so she said, "I know that that you like your music, and you've been interested. Had you considered that?" And I said, "I hadn't really thought about it." She said, "Well, talk it over with your band director." My band director at the time was George R. Wilson, and wonderful guy, really nice, and the people, we enjoyed, the band enjoyed what we did there. And he said, "Oh, sure." I said, I think you'd do well that. So I got the catalogs from State University of New York, and at the time, the guidance counselor recognized that I didn't come from a really affluent family. We got along pretty well, and we never had any trouble eating or having clothes, but we weren't going to go to Eastman or Juilliard or any place like that.
Gotcha.
So I went to the New York State Teachers College that specialized in music, and this was at Potsdam, New York, and the Crane School of Music. And another thing that really piqued my interest, these were the swing years, and some of us in the band, we formed our own little dance band. It was called a dance band back then. And we chipped in a few bucks a piece, went down to the music store and bought as many stock orchestrations, you know, those old stocks,
Yes.
as we can get a hold of. And we would get together in somebody's cellar and practice. And we got to do a couple of jobs there for pay. I think we got $5 a piece for doing these things, but we were playing some of the music. Tommy Dorsey, of course, was my idol, and I think I had every 78 RPM that he ever produced. And plus I had a big library. I had an old Victrola that my grandfather had given me, one of those great big old boxes, you know, a big crank on the side, and you'd play about 2 records, and then they would start to slow down, you know. But that's what I listened to, and I loved the swing. And a very fortunate thing happened to me when I was getting ready to go up there to Potsdam. About a week or two before, I got a phone call from a guy up there who was the leader of a dance band. And he told me that they needed a trombone, and that I had been recommended by the faculty member who had auditioned me for the school, and would I be interested in coming up and playing? I would have to get there a week early because they were going to rehearse, and I did. And this group, this dance band, turned out to be probably the best band in all of northern New York. And we played jobs all the way from the Thousand Islands on across. We even played one, I remember, at the University of Vermont. Of course, Potsdam is way up north. We're only about 18 miles south of the Canadian border. But I want to tell you, when I did go to college, there were a lot of veterans. And in this particular dance band, I was the only guy who hadn't been in service. And so I'm talking with all these guys are older than I am. I was 17 years old there. And I want to tell you, they taught me a lot.
Learned a lot.
Yeah. Not all of it had to do with music, but I learned a lot.
So
Anyway.
did you go on the road and play professionally before you, immediately, or did you start teaching right away?
No, when I finished my degree there, and I had played with this band all along, when I finished my degree in 1950, we were right smack in the middle of the Korean War.
Yes.
And on the advice of some of these veterans who had been in before, I enlisted in the Navy and went to the Navy School of Music.
Okay.
And I had a 4-year enlistment. I had several months at the Navy School of Music, and then they needed a new, what they called a unit band back then. A unit band was like a 21-piece band, and they went different places. And so they formed a unit band, and the way they did it then, at the Navy School, if they needed a new band, they would take the 4 trumpet players who had been there the longest, and 3 trombone players and a baritone player and so forth throughout the band, and put us together. We were very fortunate in that we had a good group. Not all of them came out that way, but we had a really good group, and not only that, we were very compatible, and we got shipped out aboard the battleship Missouri. We were together on that ship for 2 years, and a very significant portion of my life, and we played all over. We played every day on the ship, entertained the crew, and we did colors in the morning. We did parades. If we were in port, we did dances. We got a lot of playing.
What an experience.
Yeah, it
You
was.
got to see the world too.
And incidentally, back in 1983, the ship every year has a reunion, and it's open to anybody who ever served on the ship. And one of the guys got the idea, well, let's see if we can't get the band together again. And so they contacted everybody, and we did. We went up to this reunion. It was in Portland, Maine, and we played, and we had access to music and everything, and we had such a good time, and we were such a big hit there with the crew. I remember specifically that we were playing a dance, and we were up on a stage, and we were behind a curtain. And when they opened the curtain, we were playing the Missouri Waltz. And, you know, tears, really. We were, not only us, but everybody out there. And there. So I say we decided to get together, and we enjoyed ourselves so much in 1983. We said, well, let's do it again next year. And we ended up doing it for 24 years.
Wow.
We would go to the reunion, and we only stopped just a few years ago, and the reason being that we've lost too many members. We were able to keep a good nucleus, and any place we ever went, we were able to fill in with other musicians that we knew if we needed 3 or 4 to help us fill out a 16-piece band. And we would go, we would play a concert and a dance and a memorial service. And I said we did that for 24 years.
Well, I can certainly see how you got involved and turned on to music. So take us now to how and where you began your teaching career and kind of get us into that early stages of that.
Okay, well, it's this way. When I came out of the Navy, I had the GI Bill. I went to Indiana University and got my master's. And I was finishing up my master's, and I had interviewed at a couple jobs up on Long Island, but I hadn't really found just what I was looking for. And I was doing a summer course, a summer workshop course, 2-week course, visiting professors. One of them was from Potsdam, my undergraduate school, and the other one was Dr. Wiley Housewright. Right, Florida State University. And he asked me one day, he said, what was I planning on doing? I told him, well, I haven't found what I was looking for. He said, what are you looking for? I said, I want a straight band director's job, and near the salt water if possible. And he said, well, had you ever thought about going to Florida? I said, no, I never had. So he gave me the address of Carolyn Day, who was the supervisor of music in Jacksonville. And I wrote her a letter on a Thursday, and Saturday she called me and offered me my choice of 3 jobs.
Wow.
And there were 2 high schools and a junior high school at the time. And so I said, what have I got to lose? I was still single. I was going to Florida. I do tell you this, I had to go and find a map and find out where Jacksonville was, because I had never been to Florida. And
well, it was near the water.
yeah, it was near the water. It suited everything there. And so I took the job. It was at Paxson High School in Jacksonville, and my first job. And I have to say, there were pluses and minuses about that job. The kids were good, but we were in kind of a out west neighborhood there, and my band room, it was a new school, but the facility that I had for a band room was an old wooden barracks building from World War I that they had brought in and set up out in back of the school. And I had that. In fact, I had that was my band room for 7 years, except that after about the 4th year that I was there in that particular situation, I got a call from my principal, great guy, Welcome Shira, and it was about 2 a.m. And he called me and said, Don, I hate to call you this time, but I just got called, and the band room's on fire. And so, of course, we went over there, and this band room, I say old wooden barracks building, was heated by 2 oil stoves. And we never did know whether somebody had broken in. We weren't too far from the railroads and stuff, and to keep warm, because this was in the middle of the cool weather. But we lost
music, instruments, everything.
Music,
right?
instrument, everything. Fortunately, the kids had their uniforms at home. But so what they do, they tore all that down and moved another old one in. So that's the negative. But I did have good students to work with and good administration, and enjoyed it. And got my feet wet. I became an FBA member in 1955. Became an FBA member. That makes me now a 58-year member.
Wow.
And I think there are a few guys around who may beat me out, but not too many. And after I also was thinking about maybe going back to New York, and I had a few contacts up there. But I met my wife. You know, she was a Jacksonville native, and we got married, of course, and started a family. And so, of course, I stayed there in Jacksonville.
So you were at Paxton for how long?
7 years. I was there for 7 years, and each year was better. And one of the big things that helped me back then, of course, I had a military background, but you know, military marching isn't exactly what you do with a marching band. And I know when I first got started into that, it was kind of the old style of, you know, make a formation and play something appropriate. We used to joke and say, well, we're going to make a fish and play scales. You know,
very nice.
Yeah, but the Florida Bandmasters Association started their marching band clinic over at the University of Florida, and our first clinician was Casavan.
You know, good first clinician.
Yeah,
yes.
First one, Casavan. Oh, I came back all enthused from that and started doing some of that type of stuff. Second year was Don Marcouillet from Drake University. Now he used this 4-man squad system, and he introduced me to that. And so I came back and I made up a kind of a combination between Casavan and Don Marcouillet, and kind of evolved my own style, which, believe it or not, came out very close to Bill Moffat's style, who was our next clinician. Oh. And those 3 guys had a big influence on me, and we were able to put forth some pretty good bands there.
So where'd you go then?
Well, I got a tip from Bill Swore. I don't know, you know, whether you knew Bill Swore, but Bill Swore had this Tennessee background and did all this drill work, and he had not only a superb marching band, but he had a top-notch concert band. One of my good friends back then, and he had been contacted about being interested in MacArthur High School in Hollywood. And he said no, that he wasn't interested in a move, but he had a friend who might be. And passed the word on to me. I put in an application, come down and interviewed. I was called back for a second interview and ended up with the job. And I think one of the things that really helped me move down here was the last year I was up there in Jacksonville. We had 3 bands: the Terry Parker Band, the Englewood Band, and my band, Paxton High School, and we combined and did a drill-style show for the halftime of the Gator Bowl game, and it was filmed by a professional photographer, and they did a great job. And of course, when I came down to interview, I brought that film with me, and I do think that probably had a an influence on and helping me moving down there, because it was a pretty impressive show, I have to admit. It was fortunate. The three schools, one of them, their colors were black and red, one of them was black and gold, and our school was navy blue and gold. And so the uniforms, it looked like one band out there.
Wow.
And and so we moved down, and I was very fortunate. A principal who hired me, Alfred G. Rill, he was, his undergraduate work was in music. And he had been a band director for a few years. And he'd also been the mayor of Hollywood. And he had some influence on designing the music facilities at the school. And I know that when I was down there, there was the biggest band room in all of not South Florida, but at least in Broward County there. And we even had out in the stadium, on either side of the stadium, in the stands, in the corner, we had a roofed over section for the band, even for the visiting band. And you know, I have to say, it didn't always keep a lot of the rain out because the rain came in from the side. But one thing, we had light.
Yeah.
We had light over top of us the whole time. And he was obviously a very supportive principal. All of a sudden, I had a nice facility. I had the library wasn't too good back. The only really decent things in the library were the things that the previous directors had to use for the band contest. And contest is the word that we used back then, if you remember. So the principal gave me a couple $1,000. He said, "This is for your library." And I took that FBA list and went down and created a fairly decent library. And he was supportive that way all the way along. When I had been up in Jacksonville, another one of the negatives up there was the fact that financially the county would give us $125 a year. And so everything that we had to work with came from fundraising and band boosters and things like that.
That wasn't even a lot then, was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Didn't buy much at all. But I had good support. I remember one of the things when I went in and looked at the instruments there were 2 contra E-flat clarinets and 1 contra B-flat clarinet, and they weren't even out of the case yet. You know, I was, well, a little bit like going to heaven.
Absolutely. So how long were you at MacArthur?
I spent 19 years.
Wow,
at
kind of
MacArthur.
home.
Yeah, and I loved it. And it was, had great students to work with.
Thank you.
And yeah, you among them, of course, that first year. I can't claim a lot of credit for you, though, because, man, I only had you for that 1 year, you know.
It was a great year. It brought stability, and that was one of the things that I wanted to let the world know, that I had been there for a couple of years before you got there, and we went through a succession of band directors. I mean, there was just one that had been there for a long time that was finished, and then Al Rill, that you mentioned, the principal, was our director for half of the year before you got there.
Yeah.
And so we went through a lot, and I got to experience a lot of folks, and then you brought stability.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you put it that way, because I came down and I guess I did have something to offer, immediately I came down there and for the summer band program. I had 6 weeks of summer band, and I was into this drill thing, you know, and I presented them with the fundamentals, and the kids just ate it up, really.
Yes.
there weren't any other bands at that time. They were still doing formation shows mostly, and we were the only band that was doing this particular style, and went over very well. It created a successful atmosphere right away, and like you say, I'm glad you hear you say that about the stability, because it was an easy situation to take over in a way. And here again, I enjoyed that.
Well, there were certainly some fine programs that went on there during your tenure. So after MacArthur, what did you do?
Well, after MacArthur, I got a little bit burned out. I'll be honest with you, what I did when it came to a lot of the bands had started going to the contest type thing.
Competition.
And while we had fine marching bands, I really didn't want to get into the competition. So, but it was kind of like the writing was on the wall. Everybody else was doing that, and so I elected to move to middle school for a few years, and I went up and taught at Rickards Middle School for a couple of years, and then I retired. This was 1983, and that's.
But you didn't stay retired.
No.
It happens to a lot of us.
For a few years, I worked at a music store, and then Gloria Voggy at Pioneer Middle School put in to take a sabbatical. And knowing right from the beginning that this was going to be a one-year situation, I took that job for 1 year. Very fortunate, I just happened to live 4 blocks away from Pioneer Middle School. And she had a good program going, of course. Everybody knows of Gloria. And when I finished that, I went into this like consultant business. I worked at schools. I would go in to this school for 2 or 3 hours and another school for 2 or 3 hours. And I was putting in about 3 or 4 days a week doing this. And I still thoroughly enjoyed working with the students. And one of the things I worked at all levels, and I know there was 1 year when I was a consultant at 5 different schools. But as I got older, it got a few less and a few less. I finally ended up mostly teaching at Pioneer Middle School. And working with Gloria was a great situation. She had good programs, and the students there were wonderful to work with. When she retired, Richard Euler took the job, and Richard was a smart guy, but he had a lot to learn about band directing because he had been primarily a choral director, but he picked up very well. He had myself working with him, and he had a couple other guys. He had a woodwind man and a percussion man working with him, and he was able to build up a program in not very many years. It's only been 3 or 4 years. I can't remember, about I think maybe 4 or 5 years that he's been there, and he's done a fine job. He's got a big program now, and a couple of weeks ago he asked me to come over and work with the trombones, and I went over and worked for 5 hours with the trombones in every section, and here again I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I tell you, I was a little bit whipped by the end of 5 hours anymore.
I'm sure. Well, we need to get personal with you a little bit. During your career, I was just wondering if there was anything about your personal character that you might say enabled you to achieve the level of success musically that you did.
I hate to use this word, but I have to, being honest, the word is ego.
Okay. I thought you were going to say swing. Ego.
No, I want to be, anything I do, anything that I do involved with music, I want it to be good. When I say ego, I don't mean only personal ego. I'm not looking necessarily for praise for anything. However, I do kind of wallow in it one now and then. Wanting the groups that I work with, whether it be an individual or a full band or a jazz group or anything, I want them to be good. And there's just that desire. I work pretty hard. Go at it and.
Well, then what concept would you feel would be an important thing that you had to instill in your students in order to get them to go along on this ride with you to musical, wonderful?
Same thing, to really enjoy what they're doing, like what they're doing. And I think it's a well-known fact, if you start off, the better you can do something, the more you like it, and particularly on an instrument, no matter what it is. I had that experience myself, talking to you about not being too great when I was way back in school, but having the opportunity to get better, and how it made me have the desire to keep on going. And even today, I still enjoy learning something new. I played a concert last night down at the beach, and I'm playing right now with 3 bands, 2 concert bands. I play with the Broward Symphonic Band under Neil Jenkins, great director, and about 110-piece band. And I'm playing with the American Legion Band under Jim McGonigal, here, another good band, about 65 pieces. And that's the band we played last night. We did Light Up Fort Lauderdale. We're getting ready for their Christmas season. This was down on the beach at Fort Lauderdale. And I'm playing with one jazz group. I was playing with 2, but one of them I dropped out of. A good jazz group too, and I've kept up my jazz playing all these years.
Well, that's one of the questions that we had is what are you doing now in retirement to keep your creative juices flowing? But it sounds to me like you really haven't retired. You're still working pretty hard. You're still consulting, and you're playing 3 or 4 nights a week.
Well, I'll tell you, if I'm sitting here and watching television, I feel a little bit guilty, like I ought to be doing something better. That is, unless it's a football game or something, or I do watch the news, but I watch very little else. Besides this playing, which I still enjoy, I live here at where we are now is Covenant Village. It's a life care retirement center, and I've been here 6 years. And they have a lot of activities, and they have gotten me into doing lectures on music. And I've been doing a series. I've already done 5, and I have 1 a month scheduled for yet a few more months. And most of these are on classical music. I did play with the Jacksonville Symphony for 7 years while I was up there, and I've always loved classical music, and I love my jazz. I love the old swing bands particularly, and I get to play with both. I don't play any orchestral music anymore, but we tackle some pretty rough stuff in Neil's band, and then as you've probably noticed when you walked into my apartment, I do have another hobby, and that is woodcraft. I love working with my hands, and I've gotten into what's called intarsia. It's where it's a little hard to describe, but you make pictures out of wood using different kinds of wood, a lot of them exotic woods from South America or someplace, and then you cut out all the pieces, and some of these will have over 100 pieces, different pieces, and put them together, and and this is completely away from music.
Well, yes, but it's still art. You're still using raw materials to do art.
I like creating,
and that's again, it's kind of like what you did with bands. You were creating, you were instilling music in the young people's lives, and making and doing art there.
We have one other of our guys that live here is tuba player. And we don't have very many. We have some piano players around, but we don't have many instrumental, either woodwinds or brass, other than Mills Rogers, who plays tuba, and myself. So what I've done, I've written out, and we have a repertoire of about 12 or 14 pieces, and every once in a while I write out a new one just for the two of us. And we will go over to our care center here and entertain, or someplace where we have something scheduled for the first week in January, and so that's just another thing.
Well, as we begin to wrap it up here, it seems to me like you're getting to you're kind of going around a point that I think might be good advice for all young directors and people out there. So would you like to pass along some of that good advice?
Well,
about playing?
Two or three things. First of all, keep up your horn. Whatever you're playing, don't set it aside. Get involved playing, because playing is a pleasure. I have been able to, right from the beginning, play with bands and jazz groups, dance bands, and different things. And I say it is a real source of personal pleasure when you retire, particularly. Other thing, as far as working with the bands, I would say, of course, I don't think there are very many of us who get into this without a real love of music and so forth. But stay positive. Particularly with dealing with students, keep things on a positive level. No matter who you're working with, the students or the parents or anything, try to keep it moving on the side of being good. Don't put down people. And another thing, work your band, keep up the fundamentals. One of the things that I don't think I was doing this, I might have been doing it when you were in the band, but something I developed along the way is I would do 8 or 10 minutes of fundamentals to start every band rehearsal. I didn't have one single warm-up that I did every day, but we got to the point where we would take, like this week is the key of A flat. And we would work, well, I had 3 books that I used. I had that Blue Ensemble drill book, and I had a book, I had, of course, the Treasury of Scales, and I had another book. It was a Bellwin book called Advanced Fun with Fundamentals. And I liked it very much. So one of the things I really liked about it is when it's opening in each unit, which was done by key signatures, the opening exercise would be the scale, but not just the scale. It would be the scale that covered the complete range of the instrument. And they were very well written, and I liked that because it would take you not only to the top of 2 octaves, but if the instrument had notes above it, would take it, and below, and so forth, and there. And I think, in both the situations that I had, I didn't have a lot of students who were taking private lessons. Some, yes, but not a great deal. So their lessons were what they got in band, and doing that along with I loved sight reading, and I kept we would sight read a lot at the beginning of the year, and by the time it came time to do a concert or something like that, we'd have a 40 or 50 selections in the folder, and we would pick our concert program from those selections. I just enjoyed that part of it.
Well, those are some very, very strong points for all of us to pay attention to when we're working with and building a band program. Mm-hmm. And I've certainly enjoyed talking with you this morning and reminiscing a little bit. And I'm just thinking what a joy it has been for me to know you and be able to pick your brain as you talked about the marching techniques and all that you developed. I remember when I first started high school, you were the person I went to steal from. And I stole most of what I did in high school from you. And I wanted to thank you and put that in the archives of FBA and let the world know. Again, that's what we're all about, sharing here at FBA.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed watching your career, too. As a former student, we had several students who went on in there, but of course you're right here.
Right.
You've been right here in my area and came up through, and so it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for that. It was a joy to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And thank you for sharing with FBA today, Don.
Been my pleasure.
Thank you.